leader of the tournament is in trouble.
Oh yes, he's in big trouble, but he's fighting very, very hard. The computer says he's completely winning for white.
You checked it actually.
Yes,
I
so
did
it was
not.
+3 plus, and he can do almost anything. But he has to do something, and he's got only 3 minutes left, and less actually. So this is it's not decided. Marchier Lagrave thought it was more than 90% chance of winning. I thought everything looks tempting, everything. But for instance, my first thought was just this, and then just double on. Well, there's Queen B6, the Rook B6, but there are tricks. Magnus is fighting because he's defending the pawn, and now he has a plan. And after C6, he could take with the pawn, defending the Rook on A7. So it's not necessarily a forced win. I'm sure Wesley So is trying to find a forced win here.
In terms of the time situation, Wesley has 2 minutes and Magnus 6.5. This is move 37, so still 3 more moves to be played before they receive an extra 50 minutes.
And it's not so easy to make a decision because Magnus is doing something. He's perhaps threatening to take, and if he takes back, and suddenly Magnus is active in Rook A4, so a decision has to be made. I thought perhaps it was possible also to play G6 and just play King F2 and hold the king, hold the bishop on G. Well, lots of arrows here. That's also an option, but the most obvious option is, of course, to try to do something with G takes here, but not that simple to calculate, because if you go here, there is bishop F3. He did play G6 actually.
G6 check.
Now
King
Magnus
H8.
will not be mated. So now, and perhaps King F2, but not clear actually. E5 is also very much in the air. E5.
That would be a very concrete variation if he can go for the pawn.
Yeah,
Now
B5.
he plays B5.
He wants to play simple chess and prevent all counterplay. But I'm not absolutely sure because Magnus has a plan on that, and that plan is just to run with the A-pawn.
So Wesley is giving back the pawn by pushing B5, and the idea is to bring the rooks to the B file.
Or maybe E5 is.
Rook B2
he did play this first.
has just been played.
Not that obvious actually, but at least it's made it to move number 40.
Yes, so both players will receive an additional 50 minutes on the clock. This is without increments, so there was time trouble by the end of this game. Now, after Magnus's move, they both have an extra 50 minutes, 5-0.
I think So's plan will be to bring the king to F4 actually, and just say that this bishop is doing nothing.
I love that king maneuver, king to F4.
That is, and then anytime he wants to play E5, and that may actually be a very simple plan. But Magnus will run with his pawn. He can run perhaps all the way to A2, but maybe not further. But Magnus is not without counterplay in this situation, I would say. He could go here, then he gets a chance to play this one. So I don't really see the point of allowing that. So maybe Queen D7. A little bit curious actually about what's how So is going to prevent all kind of counterplay here, because that would be what he wanted to do. Prevent all kind of counterplay. But if I try to do my plan, it's not that simple, I think. Let's say you put this one here. There is Rook A3 and a threatening mate.
Oh, let's not get self-mated in the middle of the board.
So I'm not absolutely sure about So's decision. It feels like it should have been something concrete, but it's every reason to praise Magnus for fighting. He played bishop H5. It was probably the only move, but it feels like So perhaps could have played G5 right away, and that was what was suggested by Magnus Carlsen and Nakamura. And they said it was just winning after Rook C3. I think it is, but perhaps but not. I think it should go to C2 perhaps, because I was just wondering. I'm sure this should. Maybe that was more precise, but it's not completely clear, because this Magnus could stay on. to the g pawn for a while. And if it tries to play with the other rook to h1 or something, it is perhaps possible to hold on a
by
little
bringing
bit.
the rook to h8 and then king to g8.
And the moment he plays f6, black has to play g6, I think, and it's not so simple to play e5 because of counterattack on the diagonal. It's not completely winning, but something like this. Not completely winning, but it should be winning. Maybe not completely, but very close to.
The problem for Wesley was that by this point of the game he only had a few minutes left on the clock and he had to go for some concrete variation which requires quite some calculation, but he didn't have much time on the clock to do it, so he went for g6 and b5 in the last 2 minutes
He did.
on his time.
And first he played rook c2, and Magnus actually, I'm not sure was it necessary to allow absolutely anything, because it was quite relevant to play rook a1 and just prevent the a5 trick, because and just improve the king's position to king f2 perhaps.
Wait for move 40 before taking direct action.
It seems like there's no hurry for white to play. Well, if he can just hold the black down, it would be quite tempting. And it is rook a1 seems like it's doing just that.
It's possible that he went for the direct variation because he saw something very concrete, and in that case he thought that this was the moment to do it. If he thought that this is a winning variation, but he might have missed something because the position we have currently in the game doesn't seem to be that clear cut that it is winning for white.
It's not absolutely clear cut. I was just wondering if he perhaps in this line could play something like b6 and perhaps this one, and then if you defend it, you could either go back or maybe even rook b8. Not completely clear actually. If you play rook b8, it's hanging here. But this is not completely clear actually. Maybe this. Not completely clear if I play something like this.
So this is still a game. Before it seemed to be a bigger advantage for Wesley, so it should still be better for white. The question is how much of an advantage is it?
Yeah, the final position, the position we have here, I think it's becoming a little bit unclear actually, because there better be something forced, because Magnus has such an easy plan just to run with the a-pawn. And Magnus is actually, his clock is ticking down to 0. He has to make a move before the clock.
You shouldn't forget that he has to make move 40. It already
Yes.
happened to him once that he thought that he was getting more time.
Yes.
Actually, it was at move 60 against Vasilin Topalov a few years ago. But now he should still remember that he has just made a move.
He just made a move. He threw
With
in
30 seconds on the clock, he made move 40.
He threw in bishop queen c6. I don't think it matters very much, because I don't think the rook is particularly better placed on b6 than on b2. So I guess Magnus was just... it's kind of... the action is not happening on the b file here, I think. Or it wasn't meant to happen on the b file. It was meant to happen on the king's side. But this move gives So the option of tripling on the b line if he wants to.
Yeah, why not? Although the e4 pawn is also a target, so it's
Maybe
not so easy to
maybe
move
it's quite
everything to the
simple
b
actually,
file.
just by tripling.
Yeah, just like this, and rook to a7 and queen b2.
Now it's becoming...
The problem for black, and it's a huge problem, that after pushing g6, the back rank is always an issue. So black can get mated on the back rank at any point in this game.
Yes, that's true. This looks like...
even without queens, so you can trade queens.
it's just to trade queens.
And the black rook will have to go back to the back rank in order to prevent rook b8 mate. This
It
king
can be-
situation is horrible. It couldn't be any worse with a
No,
castled king.
couldn't. But Magnus could actually fight on here with this, let's say c6.
Because he's just in time after c7 to capture the pawn on
I'm
f5.
sure this is lost. because the king simply
Yeah, the white king will defend the f5 pawn, so you can go quickly king f2, king g3, king f4, and then you play c7, rook b8.
Exactly.
This is a winning endgame.
This looks just winning. So maybe it wasn't such a good idea to play queen c6 when you see this line.
And then we were wrong claiming that the advantage is not so much anymore for Wesley. Maybe it is still a very concrete line that is winning.
It is possible to go here though. It looks
Does it
actually
change the fact that I can double on the b file?
and then you can just go here actually.
Yeah.
Well, couldn't you go there also in the other line?
Yes, why
It
not?
looked even stronger. It looks actually quite stupid to throw in queen d7, but maybe I had no choice because after this you can also play first. Maybe
Queen
start
to
with
d5
this,
and then double rooks on the b file.
and maybe it's as simple as this actually.
I think we have just misunderstood that by doubling rooks on the b file and playing queen d5, white is still completely winning.
It's absolutely. This is also just over. It's not. It doesn't work because you just take her.
Our apologies for the previous analysis. We completely missed the idea of Wesley. The b7 pawn is going to fall, and
It
after
is
that pawn
actually.
falls, the game is over.
It's just perhaps as simple as that. Yes. So, is there any chance whatsoever here?
Some tricks and traps. Are you trying
Well,
to seek?
let's say you have to go here, and let's say you have to give away the b pawn. So the only chance left is to run with the a pawn then. But this looks like a good start to play. It's a good start to play queen d5 because you might need the rook to stop this pawn. Well, something like this is of course absolutely lost. I think it's tempting to throw in this, but something like this. No.
Trying to promote
sorry.
the a pawn, but I'm afraid you're not managing.
It's not completely. If you go here, then there's this move. Of course, it must be lost.
Yes, with such a passive position, the king is always in trouble. So with the pawn on g6, the black king is always in trouble. And of course, the c-pass pawn is a key factor. Apart from the very active white pieces, everything is in white's favor. The only chance would be this a-pass pawn for black for counterplay.
If you manage to be very lucky, you can get something like this, and there's not many pieces left to move actually, but you could perhaps.
Well, Magnus is doing great about creating some kind of an art with all the pieces on the back rank. If it was a painting, he would appreciate it, but certainly not in a game. He's going to lose.
Yes, and also here there should be lines with. I mean, maybe even bishop e5, but
That would be very
not here. But
Isn't it working?
you can just take it. I thought f6, but then there's a check here.
Oh,
But
careful.
we have lines
Still
like
some,
this.
Some last chance of making a mistake.
But then there's a check here, and it's actually enough for.
Oh, yeah, it was a beautiful idea by Seaman. If queen takes f6, you trade queens, and then rook h7 would have been mate with the piece down.
Actually, this is not working either. Doesn't seem to be any checks left even here.
Wow. But wait, I can sacrifice the bishop. Doesn't it matter?
You could actually. But you could actually.
Going for my perpetual check.
Mm,
You don't believe in my perpetual checks.
it's not that clear actually. Things like this. Because if I go down here, there's a check there. Go here.
Oh, this is still not.
Not completely
It's
clear,
not
but
so
we were a
clear.
little bit quicker.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Wesley doesn't have to go for
No.
this variation. He has time on the clock, so he doesn't need to go crazy.
But that seems like defending the pawn from d7 didn't seem like a possibility. Then leaves us with queen c8 as the only alternative.
Rook b6 has just been
yes.
played by Wesley. Queen d7 or queen c8 doesn't change much the fact that the b7 pawn is going to fall.
If you go here and Magnus tries, and if he plays here, then there's at least these possibilities with queen a4 actually. Maybe throw in rook a7. So it's not. He went to c8. It's going for something we were looking at. I think this is a kind of a desperate road. He's just trying to run with the. But did we start with this one?
Yes, why not?
Little. He could just defend it. I wonder if he needs to play this to prevent bishop
f3.
bishop f3.
So you're saying that if he goes rook e to b1 immediately, black can go for bishop to f3. Still some practical chance. The game continued with queen d5, so we are looking at the position that could happen very shortly in the game.
Yes. Rook ace. I think we just looked at a4. That's the alternative. But if you can hold this one, I'm just a little bit curious about if there is something. The weak back rank is certainly.
Yes, it's a horrible
essential.
factor. You cannot do anything about it as black, so there's no way that the black king can come out of the corner.
I was just thinking in terms of something like this, but it's hanging on f5.
This is really bad for Magnus. There's no practical chance whatsoever.
It is rook a7 and run with the a pawn.
Well, that one we have seen, but objectively speaking, it's not a big chance for surviving.
Yes, maybe the simplest would simply be to play something like rook e3 and actually stop the pawn.
You stop the pawn and you prevent bishop f3 at the same time.
And actually, it seems like to stop everything actually. And just send the king to f4 because it's good there.
The black pieces can barely be improved, so now you give black the chance of playing 2-3 extra moves. But what can you do with those 2-3 moves for black? How do you improve his pieces?
This bishop here has potential now. It can go down here.
Well, we have one piece that we can move.
Well, I don't think it's good on a6 though.
No.
It might, let's say it ends up on g4 then.
This is a very sad
better
position for black.
Of course, let's say we have such a position, what is there to do?
Complete domination by white. The black pieces cannot do anything.
I do nothing. I do go forward and back here.
Okay. And you want me to prove that this is winning. So now we should calculate and see whether with the queen on c8 or with the queen on d7, what is it that white has, a concrete variation. Well, one concrete thing could be when you have your queen on c8, I have queen f7, or now as well, yeah. Now as well I have queen f7.
Okay, let's say it just goes back.
What's your next move?
What's your next move?
I can do whatever I want. What's your next move?
I'm doing nothing and go forward and back with the rook.
Okay.
Challenge or maybe
accepted.
I can do something actually. Maybe I could play rook here and rook.
Wow, that is so active.
So you're impressed.
So impressed. Oh, we are making joke of this position, but unfortunately it is a very sad position for the world champion.
Maybe it should be something simpler, but there are tricks here. For instance, taking on e4 and taking on f5. It's actually an option.
Okay, so I shouldn't be over-optimistic.
All the reason for being optimistic, but care needs to be taken. The one thing for certain, Magnus will fight. He will not just resign this. We'll make it as hard as possible for him and wait for better times. That's the plan.
Wait for better times. I like the way you put it.
Yeah. And he's good
there's
at
so
that.
many ways Wesley can approach this position. It's complete domination. All he needs to do is prevent the one and only counterplay. Well, maybe there are two counterplay options for black. One is the a-passed pawn, and the other is some kind of a trouble against the white king. So he shouldn't overlook any sacrifices or any bishop f3 moves.
I wonder if this is a good plan, because he cannot do anything, and then start.
I like it a lot. I think this is a great plan.
And then where do you want your king ideally?
Maybe you can place it anywhere.
A1 perhaps?
Yeah, well, the white king can go anywhere.
Maybe just back to A1 or something. He can go either way it wants. He can go this way if it wants to. Maybe the ideal
Certainly.
square is b4, perhaps.
It is Magnus who is still thinking after queen to d5. Obviously, he will try to fight. He is not the kind of player that would resign. Actually, all these top players fight till the very end. They try to find any single chance in the position. If there is something, then they will definitely spot it. Let us know on social media, what do you think about this game, how likely it is that Wesley will win it, and if he wins, well, he's going to join Magnus in the lead. How will it affect our standings for the rest of the tournament? How likely it is that Wesley will go on and win more games, or do you think that Magnus will bounce back after the free day and win a couple of games to win the event? It's hashtag Norway Chess that you should use on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. We read the tweets, so tweet us if you would like to talk to us. Simon has Twitter. I had to drop it.
Yes. But it's good for the tournament, I must say, if Wesley So wins. Magnus didn't go for the passive defense. He left his a-pawn. He did play. He did run with a-pawn. Run with a-pawn. And then it becomes kind of forced because this one will, or at least Magnus has a plan.
Which we have seen previously, the a-pawn being one of the few options for black to create counterplay.
It's incredibly tempting to take with the rook.
And then threatened queen f7.
And it's not just mate because he can play
Rook g8.
g8 and he can't, well, it's not, it would be tempting to take on f6, but this rook is hanging.
Well, wait a second, in the position with the queen on d5, can't I just take on g7?
Oh, that is just over. Has Magnus overlooked that?
Is this the current position? No.
Did he play a4?
No, rook takes b7 hasn't been played yet.
No, but
he pushed a4.
But is he threatening to take on?
He is threatening to take on g7. That is the threat of white. So rook oh, bishop takes g6. Rook takes b7 has just been played.
And he had to play
rook g8.
Yeah,
obviously.
it was no proposal. He could just take back if he took on g6. So rook g6 had to be played. Gives black white time to prevent everything somehow, or at least it should. Isn't it just to run with this one?
And it's not a problem if I also run with the a-pawn.
Just run.
Run.
Well, you don't need. You could play this one. Shouldn't be a problem. But why not? Well, after this one, we're talking very theoretical, or but this is not.
Whoa, rook a5.
It's not a fighting move because you can just play rook b8 if you want to.
Yeah.
I believe.
It's just there's barely any space for the black pieces. That is a huge problem.
It is actually kind of.
It's like a back rank play.
But if it's Magnus makes Wesley So makes it easy, just takes here, and he keeps everything queen c5 with after the check. Well, just run with the c-pawn. An incredibly natural move. Is there something? There might be. There's a trick.
What is your trick? You want to take on d6.
But even this doesn't work. Because you can just take this one.
And then rook b8.
Rook b8, or if he takes with the queen. And he can actually just take and or not take. He can play this move. It's actually also mate, I think. What a cool.
Yeah, even with the piece down, white is still winning.
Yeah, this is quite cool actually.
The back rank. See that g6 pawn? You see why Wesley pushed g6? We didn't understand at first that it was so dangerous. The b7 pawn falls and it's all over.
This, but he can win in any way he wants to. There is also after rook a6, he could also. I can do different things, I'm sure.
Tough times for the world champion, trying to hold on to this position. Rook g8, preventing rook takes g7. That was the last move by Magnus Carlsen, and now Wesley has the option of playing
different things. Bishop e7 looks tempting too, just to take this one.
Capture on f6 and rook h7 mate.
he goes here, a little bit careful about bishop, queen, rook b6, because then the queen might suddenly enter afterwards. Running with the c-pawn looks incredibly natural. And here, we're just running again. Well, and that must be resigned. I'm not.
Always the same idea on the back rank, the c-pass pawn together with rook b8.
I think this is kind of the quite cool line. Well, if you play this move, just so this, if you take there, that's not, well, you cannot take there, you have to take back. This was kind of a fighting option, actually.
If the bishop gets back, captures the f5 pawn, at least the c8 square will be covered.
This, I'm sure this is lost too, but this is at least
not so lost.
Not that simple. Well, I'm sure this is lost too, of course. But thing is that Magnus Wesley So could probably trade rooks, but just run with it. The king is not getting out. But I think after rook a5, I think the simplest is just to take this one, and take this one too, with something. And
does this trade of rook, the trade of rooks, do you think it gives some extra hope for black, or
really,
it is becoming worse now?
It's absolutely nothing for no contemplate the a pawn, but the white king's position is a little bit more open. But I don't think it's any danger the white king here. The queen is very well placed on either c3 or c5. I think it's important perhaps to cover the g3 square, preventing checks on g3. Just that things like this is just, you can just take it.
And then the rook comes to the back rank.
I think so.
Yeah, this would be game over again.
It's not completely clear because...
oh, some checks! I missed that.
But I think you can just go here.
Queen a2. Wow. No more checks, and if the rook is captured, c8 queen or rook. c8 rook is a mate.
Different ways of winning.
I would pick a rook.
Just thinking that's probably a good decision, because here is no reason not to be 150% sure. Just say there you can calculate everything till the bottom.
That's true. Good tip from Grandmaster Simon Agdenstein. Even if your position is completely winning, take the time to calculate everything properly instead of wanting to show off with your brilliant tactical skills and win the game in 10 seconds. I think it's better to be sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is not a shame to think. So it's not like, oh my, he has to see the winning immediately. No, you don't have to.
And
you don't have to play fast.
And the thing is that it's such a crushing win too. This is a completely crushing position. Magnus is being crushed.
Yep.
It's also possible to play something like this, I guess. Let's say the pawn runs and just move the rook somewhere. This seems to be an option too.
Beautiful. Once again, rook h7 mate at the end of the line.
Seems to be quite controlling everything.
Queen takes f6 prevents a1 queen.
Yeah.
Just controlling that square as well. Really, really painful position for the world champion, but as Hikaru and Maxime pointed out, they thought that Magnus was asking for trouble by risking.
Yeah, they actually were a bit skeptical about Black's opening play, weren't they?
Yes, they were critical of his opening play. and they said that Magnus was provoking Wesley. So we have been quoting Magnus during the entire day, since he was mentioning that he had no trouble whatsoever, no problem at all in any previous game against Wesley. He thought that making a draw was fairly easy if he wanted a draw, but he didn't want a draw. He wanted to be more ambitious.
Sometimes when he played c6. Sometimes when you're on a winning streak, as Magnus is, very good form and so on, sometimes it's actually good to lose a game, because then it strikes you back down on earth again. And
reminds you that you're still a human.
Exactly, because sometimes you may think you're a god and you can just do anything and you relax, and that's definitely a dangerous feeling.
Do you think that that's what happened to Magnus?
Thinking
that everything works.
Oh,
He was disappointed with his two previous draws. He wanted to play for a win, but his opponents didn't really give him a chance.
Yeah, it is a phenomenon that's not unknown, that you sometimes get too confident, actually.
Yes.
I'm just looking again. Rook, if the game ends like this, didn't we just look at this, c7?
Yes, we did. Even losing the piece, blundering rook takes d6 was still winning for white.
Is it?
Isn't it the line that we looked at? Or it's not winning anymore?
It's
Bishop
not winning
d4,
anymore.
bishop takes
There's
f5.
something wrong here. So what did we just look at after?
Okay, let's not go that optimistic. c7, maybe not yet.
So rook a6. Does it make a difference? Can you just throw in
Rook c1?
rook c1? It doesn't really.
Does it change the fact that after c7 the bishop is hanging?
Exactly.
The queen is defending both the rook on b7 and the bishop on d6. That's why c7 is a move that we are doubting whether it works to sacrifice a piece.
And Magnus just gave up, actually. He just
And
gave
it's
up.
over. Magnus
He just
resigned
gave up.
after c6. Wow, that means that suddenly, from a tournament where we had a sole leader with a point difference between Magnus Carlsen and the rest of the field, it is now a joint lead here at the Altibox Norway Chess tournament, with Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So leading the tournament on a +1 score. +1 I had to calculate, and also it changes the Dingliren withdrew from the event. Some of the players had played against him. As Vichy mentioned, he only has one free day, that's tomorrow. He doesn't have another game coming up with Dingliren. But yes, this changes everything. Suddenly the tournament is wide open.
Yeah, probably it's good for the tournament, actually.
Definitely, it's good for us chess fans.
I know the Norwegian TV, they cover only one game. They only focus on Magnus' game. They don't care about the others. So
Well, they do check the other games too, but of course the main focus is Magnus Carlsen
yeah, the main
in
focus
Norway.
is there. But we focus. But I think it's just good for the tournament that Magnus actually lost. It's not good for the Norwegian audience because they love to hail Magnus. But
He
maybe
can
it's
still win the tournament. Of course, this doesn't mean that Magnus doesn't have a good chance of claiming the title this year. But now, finally, there's a race for the first place.
yes, even that is the case.
Tell us on social media what you think about today's game. Do you think that Magnus took too much of a risk? Do you think that he was provoking too much Wesley? Or what went wrong in this game? Use the hashtag Norway Chess to let us know about your opinion on today's main game between Wesley So and Magnus Carlsen, or the rest of the event. We will be joined by Wesley So very shortly. He will first be interviewed on TV2, so we are waiting for him to join us and let us know about this decisive win against Magnus. His first win in a classical event, isn't it?
It is actually his first win. I was just, while you were talking, I was just looking at this line just to see if Magnus will show
Resigned
the same.
because of c7.
I would just wonder if this is the reason. It's very, very forced. And this seems actually to be just in time for... and here I think this is resignable actually.
Still, even with the piece down, the threat of d7.
It's just one tempo behind. But it's typical Magnus to resign, even though he kind of finishes the pain and get out of the situation as quickly as possible, rather than letting himself being looking. He would look quite foolish if this was the end, actually.
Yeah.
And it just get over with it.
And the players are still in the playing hall, analyzing on the board, discussing some of the variations. It's good to see that Magnus is not so upset. He didn't run away from the board.
Yeah, but he's holding his head, is he? No, not really. He's analyzing. That's nice. But I think he accepts that when your opponent really has played well. I think sometimes he gets very upset when he's done something horrible.
And in this case, it wasn't a one-move mistake. It
wasn't really.
It was
him
slowly, steadily being taken over.
Right. He was actually being outplayed, but it was something critical. He lost a pawn.
The pawn sacrifice is what Hikaru and Maxime also criticized in that moment. He went for bishop d8. We can show that moment where Magnus decided to sacrifice a pawn with bishop to d8 instead of going for something more solid with bishop f6, which was Hikaru's suggestion.
That it seemed like a critical moment, but the question was perhaps if. Then there is b6, I guess. I'm not sure why I didn't play bishop f6. I think Magnus is struggling with a bad harmony of his pieces, and now these bishops look stupid for a little while, but not necessarily for that. Well, maybe it's only for a little while. The moment he manages to play bishop to g5 and f6 and get the bishop back to f7, everything is saved, I think.
Yes, and the pawn doesn't
The main thing is that he doesn't lose a pawn.
Hikaru said that he thought that Magnus's approach was a bit similar to Fabi's when he went for dynamics, sacrificing a pawn for the purpose of a dynamic play, but there was not enough compensation simply after queen b5. Bishop d8, queen b5 is what happened in the game. We can show how he lost the pawn. So bishop d8 is offering a pawn. This is the move of Magnus Carlsen in the game, move 23. And after queen d5, two pawns are hanging. Queen b5 seems to solve it because it protects the b7 pawn and attacks the b4 pawn. But it just wasn't the case. What was going on here?
It was simply...
Yeah, bishop d6.
The thing was that, I think, is that...
This is very ugly.
And,
c6.
And c6 seems just to win.
And then you take on b7 and it's game over. You promote the b pawn.
It's as simple as that. No tricks here again.
The problem for black is that he cannot play b takes c6 attacking the queen because there's a pin on the c file.
Yes, and the rook will
So when you take the white queen on d5 with your pawn from c6, the rook is hanging on c8. This was the main problem. I'm sure that Magnus saw that he cannot take on b4. Simply he was hoping for a dynamic compensation for the sacrificed pawn, which was not the case in the game.
If this one goes here, which seems to be a bit forced, I think queen c6. I was just wondering if the knight comes here and maybe followed up by coming down there.
Oh, certainly the position should be better for white, but at least this is not a pawn down.
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
By the way, this loss means an end to Magnus Carlsen's streak. We have a tweet from Tarjei. Tarjei always knows all the stats. Thank you very much to Tarjei Svensson for tweeting about the streak of Magnus Carlsen was a 37-game streak. 37 games without a loss. This has just ended against Wesley So. Wesley is going to join us. 10-second break.
10 seconds.
Until you get your microphone.